Posso. É arroba Espírito Freemind. De nada. Vamos dar início, então?
Let's start. This is the fifth panel from the 10th Freemind 2025. Since the opening of the event, we have seen here on this stage highly qualified professionals from our country and abroad. Now, we will dialogue here and learn about digital dependencies. We are also on YouTube at Espírito Freemind. And I'd like to call to moderate this panel on digital dependencies the clinical psychologist who has been working for 16 years. And he's an expert on human behavior, public health, and chemical dependency. He has experiences in the public health system. He was an invited professor on the specialization about chemical dependency of Unifesp. He teaches online courses of Santa Marcelina. He worked as the presenter of the program Tocando em Frente with over 250 interviews about mental health. He's a postgraduate in cognitive behavioral neuroscience and has training in management of complex cases and emotional intelligence. He is the author of the book, The Success and Failure of Our Mental Standards. Ivanildo de Andrade, welcome. A round of applause. Good afternoon, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to ask Paulo to put my presentation as well. But before, let's call the panelists of this session. I'd like to call MA Edmada Monteiro. She is a teacher trainer. She has specialization in school management and psychopedagogy, institutional. She coaching and education, and she's a psychoanalyst. She is an expert on global disorders with emphasis on mental disorders. She is specialized in project pedagogy and religious teaching. She has an MA in science of religions. She works with children development and inclusion. She's the author of Reflections of a Traveler and co-author of Women Who Read Women. Edmara Monteiro, a round of applause for her. Now let's call the psychologist with an MA in residency in chemical dependency from the National University Autonomous of Mexico, Eiji Fukushima. He has an international certification on prevention. He has worked as a researcher in the Youth Center Department, clinical psychologist in the Ministry of Health of Mexico City. He was the chief on primary attention to chemical dependency in the states of Mexico. He was deputy director of the Mexican Observatory about Drugs and consultant of the Therapeutic Justice Program of the Organization of American States. He currently is the international instructor of the Provincial Universal Curriculum, and he offers technical assistance to civil society organization on themes related to prevention, directly from Mexico. Welcome. Now I will call Dr. Julia Curi. I've just even watched her lecture a little bit earlier. She's a doctor psychiatrist from the University of Minas Gerais. She has an MA and a PhD in molecular medicine. She is member of the Brazilian Association of Psychiatry. She is a professor, researcher, and she has a private practice in the field of psychogeriatrics. She works also on technological and behavioral dependencies. She has experience in cognitive behavioral therapy and the study of the problematic use of smartphones. She's known for being part of evidence-based approaches and apply them to mental health and addictions. Welcome, Dr. Julia Curi. Now, Mr. Leonardo Carristo, public manager, psychiatrist, graduated from the Santos Faculty of Medical Sciences with residency in psychiatry from the São Bernardo do Campos Health Department. She is a collaborator of ProAmite at the Institute of Psychiatry of USP and as teacher of the psychiatry residency in São Bernardo do Campo and in Santos Santa Casa Hospital. He's a trained doctor, has experience in assistance to mental health and clinical management of psychiatric disorders. So welcome, Dr. Leonardo Carriço. Oh, please. Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. It's a great joy to be here with you in this 10th International Freemind Congress, whose theme is physical dependencies and behavioral addictions. So this is the fifth panel, and we will talk about that. My child cannot no longer live without his smartphone. What now? What do I do now? What do we do with this issue? I'd like to start by giving a warning how much the unregulated and excessive use of technology is changing the way our young people keep focus and process information. So it is an increasing challenge for mental health, for contemporary mental health. So we are not only talking about or not only about technology, but about a mental health crisis among teenagers, which technology is potentiating. What do you mean by potentiating, Ivanildo? So that we are able to understand what is this potentiation, this slide will help us to understand that this is not a current problem. It's not only current but urgent. Data shows that around the world, one among each 7 teenagers already presents some sort of problem related to mental disorder. Mental health today contemplates 15% of the illness load within this age group. So I notice it's an issue, it's a crisis on mental health. I don't know if Dr. Edmara will talk about that, but I ended up bringing just to kickstart. In Brazil, 1 out of 5 children, so I'm sorry, 6 children, actually teenagers, have mental some sort of disorder, especially anxiety and depression. So this acute risk already exists. According at each 10 minutes, a teenager or an adolescent is committed to a hospital or due to self-infliction. So the psychic pain has gone so big that he needed to self-inflict pain. So it shows that we have to be more careful and understand that this mental health crisis can be and is directly d- related to the potentiation of digital dependency. So this panel will bring evidence, data, first with Dr. Edmara, as she will be our first speaker and prepare the ground to talk about digital dependency. Then, after her, Dr. Julia Curi will be the second. First, Edmara. Second, Julia Curi will talk about clinical experience and the management of patients or families, etc. Then we'll have Mr. Eiji Fukushima, who will address international experiences. Mr. Fukushima came from Mexico to be here with us today talking about this theme. And we will see what we can learn from these international experiences. And Dr. Leonardo Carriço will address public policies. So here is Dr. Ejimara, and this panel will be divided into these 3 axes, and these 4 axes will guide this panel. So the goal of this session, it will not to be to speak badly of technology. Our intention with this panel is to find pathways for a healthy use with intelligent limits. So now I'll give the floor to Dr. Ejimara to start our discussion. Good afternoon. I really don't like to be back here. It's a pleasure to be here with you today, this afternoon, being able to talk a little bit more and bring reflections and important data about the use of technology and its impact on how we raise our children, how our children and our students have placed at the level of Brazil. So we'll bring a lot of data, a lot of numbers. So please don't be scared, but that's our reality in Brazil. So we will base this debate so that other speakers can then develop other themes based on these data. So first of all, I'd like to start by uh, with a quote, which I think it's important. It says, among clicks and notifications, we are losing something precious, the ability to think in depth, to feel with presence, and learn with meaning. Digital addiction is the invisible pandemic that challenges the education in the 21st century. And when we think about this cognitive issue, behavioral issue, we are able to understand better the needs and how much has been impacting the cognitive process of our children. So thinking about this is crucial because when we think about digital addictions and addiction in general, we usually think about gambling, oh, when someone went to a casino or on cards. But today, this addiction is in the palm of our hands. Many people work with it, but other people, they are addicted and they enter a very obscure universe. And what leads these people to that universe? How to work with our children in this context? How family can take a stand in relation to that? So, this afternoon, our goal is to talk to you mainly about the cognitive and behavioral impacts associated to the excess of screen and present recent data about the digital use with children and discuss and talk about public policies. I will not talk about that in depth, but I will just provide some data about public policies and the role of the statute of children and adolescents regarding digital protection. So first of all, we're going to talk about Brazil, the scenario in Brazil. What's Brazil position in relation to digital issues? What's the process regarding screen time and how these addictions are presented every day. And then we can notice that according to recent data by PIPA's project, there are no, throughout the last 5 years, when you think about home data, 24% of homes they do not have books in them so that children can have access to literature. However, we see a recent increase of 33.2% of these children in the same age group. They watch television, they play on smartphones, they play video games, or even in tablets. So when we look at this scenario, comparing books and the digital universe, we can already see that in most households, most children have access to screens. And according to the UN, we must understand that today Brazil is among one of the countries that uses internet the most in the world. And within this scenario, my idea was to bring a table for us to better understand what's the scenario of internet in Brazil. The research Tick Kids, this is was published in 2025 and brings alarming data regarding that process. So we can see here that today we have children from 9 to 17, 93% of them use internet, which corresponds to 24.5%, no, 24 million people. And 95% of this age group are from classes A and B, and 91% are class D and E. So showing that even in low income households, there is an increase in terms of access to screens. The excessive use of mobile phones is the only connection in 78% of children and adolescents of classes D and E. And when you think about A and classes A and B, the number is smaller, it's 18% because A and B, classes A and B, they have tablets and other tools. When we look at social media users in the same age group from 9 to 17, we notice that 86% of them 86% of them have at least one social media profile, which reaches 96% of the age group. And their main use is they use for social media for entertainment. So when we look at children from 0 to 2 years old, we notice an increase 9% in 2020. 25 has increased. Children use internet. This number has already increased from 2024. We had 20 in 2024, 9%. Now we have 44%. It's important to say that the Brazilian Association of Pediatrics, it already tells us that for this age group, the recommendation is that they do not have access to internet. Nevertheless, many children already have access. And the use of internet has increased twofold throughout the last decade, which is an increase of 40% in class A and 42% in class B. So when we get this research and tries to demystify it and compare with other data, we notice that 86% of internet users are from 9 to 17 years old, and 84% of these youngsters, they say that they have already played and they already watch videos on the internet. So we can see alarming numbers from this data, either in schoolwork or to use internet with songs or access YouTube, games, etc. We also noticed that 69% of this age group already has WhatsApp, 63% already has Instagram, 45% TikTok, and 19% Facebook. So these numbers are large, big numbers. And then we become aware of the size and of the access of screen time that these children have access to. And increasingly, so when we think about public policies, we have a scenario and then we say, okay, what can I do? What's happening in the country so that within the educational process in our governments, what is being done about that? So today we have the statute of children and adolescents, and ECA in its articles 17 and 18, it ensures their right to healthy development, to protection against harmful influences. And we already have that. But when we look at the digital use, we know that there are important studies and discussions going on so that we can work with a digital ECA that will address all of this new digital scenario. So in this context, we understand that health and education, they increasingly need to walk hand in hand, thinking about the well-being of our children and in ways to be able to address this context to ensure that these children are safer and have safe access to screens. We know that we live in a digital world. We know that AI is there. We know that we increasingly are in a scenario in which the entire technological process is in the palm of our hands. So our role now is to work to be truly able to ensure that our children are well safe using screens. In this context, we have laws and public policies. So in 2025, there was the launch of the federal guide with practical recommendations regarding this entire process of screen time and digital use. We have a bill that is pending before the House of Representatives about the digital ECA. We have a regulation of advertisement on platforms aimed at children and the challenge to balance access to technology and safety and well-being. So this is Brazil and public policies. We are moving to these scenarios. And now closer to the end, we think here how to look at these children and understand that they are becoming when they are becoming addicted, or that their excessive use of screens are getting in the way of their behavioral and cognitive processes. Now we have here a table that will enable us to understand some issues. So when the loss of control regarding screen time, we have here 25% of users from 9 to 17 years old who say that they can no longer control their screen time. The search for emotional support online has increased throughout the last years to 45% among teenagers aged 15 to 17. And exposure to risk content, many teenagers report 26% were treated offensively with cyberbullying, and 26% images of access to sexual videos. And when you think about impacts on mental health, we see an increase of depression and anxiety among children age 6 to 12. And then we have to understand that before getting to dependency, there's a path to be followed. So first, that child starts having access to social media, to screens through recreational use. As time goes by, they end up using it excessively, which becomes an addiction. So then later we will reach dependency. So when we look at us adults, many of us, and then you can observe ourselves. Am I using it excessively? Am I addicted? Am I dependent? Today, in the first panel I participated today, I was saying that I, s- I have a patient that she's addicted, and her mother dresses her to go to school with a mobile phone in her hand. She has breakfast with a mobile phone in her hand, playing. When her mom picks her up, instead of saying, "Hi, mom," she asks, "Did you bring my mobile phone?" And she goes home and she has lunch and she spends the afternoon. These issues, so that child, she's already dependent on the mobile phone constantly. So we must think. But when we look at these children, we must analyze another scenario, the family. What leads them to that? What's the family process that we have? Is that family a dysfunctional family? Is that mother, does she have other issues and she cannot set limits? It's not only about dependency and use of screens. That discussion is deeper. Which are the feelings, emotions, sensations, limits? This need for acceptance, is it a way to run away, or what's going on, and what leads that child or adolescent to that digital universe? Okay, I don't know if you've all seen, this is a video of a 12-year-old child. This took place in Pernambuco, where her mom went there to remove her screen, and she had like a withdrawal feeling, and she destroyed the entire house. This was on the newspapers, so it was like it had a lot of repercussion in Recife, and that 12-year-old girl destroyed her house because she couldn't have access to her mobile phone. Well, it will be on the website, right? The presentation. Then you can download and you can access it. But it's a scene that's very sad. Her mother is crushed. So, in this context, DSM-5 in the reformed version in 2013, it already addressed that uh, disorder due to online gambling. It brings in section 3, he says that's game disorder. And moving ahead, I'd like to address some impacts on cognitive and mental health and social health as well that the overuse of screens cause in our children. So here we have scenarios regarding mental health, depression, anxiety, stress, difficulty to concentrate, and eating disorders. So it's not only because the child is on using the screen, but and is that when that child has reached a dependency level, and many complications arise from that mental issue. In addition, we have relationship problems, ADHD, sleep disorders. So it's very important that we have them stop, children stop watching screens 2 hours before they go to bed, you know. So because if we don't sleep well, we don't produce well. And for a teenager, a child who are in development, it's essential for them to have a good quality sleep. It's important for adults, even more for children. Low self-esteem, um, nomophobia, which is the fear of not having access to mobile phones. Now, when we move to neurobiological issues, we have brain changes, insular damage, which is our brain's part that directly deals with empathy, and neurochemical issues as well that addresses big dysfunctions related to these issues. Now, moving forward, we have impacts on physical health, stress, problems with posture, eye fatigue, and increase of weight. All of that caused by excess screen time and dependency. And also disorders regarding muscles and skeleton, bones, uh, secondary mental health issues, and headaches. These impact the high importance of the balance and a well-aware use of screens, and especially cultivating healthy habits. And to conclude, we must understand that screen time often must be replaced by doing nothing, by free playing, by creativity, face-to-face interaction. These are necessary pillars for the cognitive, emotional, and healthy development of our children, and that depends on us, parents, adults, uncles, aunts, who are responsible for these children and adolescents. If we don't change ourselves, we will not be able to build and have healthy children and adolescents. To do so, we must work together with different institutions, the World Health Organization, the Brazilian Association of Pediatrics, and talk and establish and set boundaries, mediation, and parents and teachers work with educational institutions to protect children. So, because this responsibility is a collective one, and we must bring together school, family, and education and health together to build a healthier environment. And the future is not only on the screens, but on the quality of the time we dedicate to the construction of healthy, empathic, and free brains. Thank you very much. I'd like very much for you to leave this place with this message. We must increasingly dedicate ourselves to this construction, to nurture these children and adolescents seeking healthy brains, empathic brains, and free brains. Thank you very much.
Tem laserzinho? Acho que não tem, né?
Testing the ticker. I don't think we have one. Well, Edmara presented us with great information, great data and evidence. And it's only based on data and evidence that we will make progress in seeking solutions and also bring the issue to a public debate. And it is important to observe how today the technology issue is a risk factor that's very relevant within this context that involves this mental health crisis among teenagers. To do so, I will now call Dr. Julia Curi, who will help us to understand how these symptoms end up impacting the lives of families and teenagers. And she, as a psychiatrist, will talk a little bit about clinical management of these cases. You guys, I will try to speak slower. Those who were in the morning, people told me you speak too fast. And my husband, very delicate, he said, "Oh, you speak very fast, but you could speak slower, right? You think very fast, but speak slower." So I'll try to talk slower. So the playful plays we had when we were children. I'm from 80. I was born in 87. At that time, there were no mobile phones or computers. We used to jump rope, do things like that. And now this is even increasingly rare. But these physical plays, games, they stimulate creativity, motor skills, reflexes, perception, the senses, the sensations, and it also enables people to do nothing when we don't do anything. And we in psychiatry have already studied that the brain, what it is at rest, not doing a specific activity, the brain is not still. It actually, when we are at rest, we activate areas of our brain responsible for creativity, for emotional health, emotional regulation. So now science has already shown that periods of rest are essential for our mental and physical health. But when we are at rest, what we do? We get our mobile phones and then we just flood our brain with stimuli. So we are not allowing ourselves to be truly at rest, which is extremely healthy for children, adults, and adolescents. Today, technology is a reference of work, knowledge, and leisure for children, adults, teenagers, but especially for children who have already grown in this environment and they became very close to technology even before they learn how to read and write. They know how to swipe, access websites before they learn how to read and write. So their brains is affected very easily by addiction than adults because the brains of children are immature and it's being formed, especially the prefrontal cortex, which is the front part of our brain that regulates behavior. It's the only brain area that it's not fully developed when we are born. It develops throughout childhood and teenage years and ends its maturity at 24, 25 years. So I expose a child to something that can cause addiction. The chance that an addiction will be developed is higher and faster than when we talk about adults. And that's the biggest risk we face today. So we have been seeing an increasing frequent use of technologies that are necessary. We're not here to say that we have to remove completely, but we have to use it in a functional, beneficial way, because these children are even preferring to have fun virtually. You have we must also have fun in person. They are replacing on in-person friendships with virtual ones, and they prefer to express feelings and receive support online than with their families and friends on a face-to-face interaction. In the morning, I talked about the difference between habit and addiction. And when we talk about mobile phones, it's even more difficult to establish that difference, because being with our mobile phones in our hands is something that everybody does, because we use mobile phones for everything, to wake up, to talk, to work. So it's difficult to differentiate if I have an addiction or if I have a habit in which, although automatic, I can have control over it. So, for instance, if I say, a person who is addicted, it cannot choose to not have access to it, to her phone. For instance, I'm going to watch this lecture without using my phone. She can do that. So the person addicted to the mobile phone, and she enters an environment where she can't use mobile phone or doesn't have Wi-Fi access, that person will have an withdrawal syndrome, just like those who have drug addiction. In my MA, I tracked dependency on smartphones, and in my PhD, I studied the brain of smartphone dependents inside to see the similarities and differences between addiction to smartphones and drugs. The person who's addicted to sweets, she can't stop. She eats everything, even if it's going to feel bad later. That person who has the habit of eating a sweet after lunch, the person only eats a piece of sweet after lunch, and that's it. So the idea is the possibility of control, the ability to control. It can be a sweet or anything else. So that's the difference of having a habit of using the mobile phone or being addicted to the use of mobile phones. And the mechanism in which this takes place in our brains is the same as when we talk about drugs. In the mobile phones, when we receive a like or we post a photo, the reward that we receive through social media, which are the content that cause dependency on smartphones the most, because stimuli are very quick and intense, watching videos on social media or playing and winning, etc. Every time we receive these rewards, we fill our brain with dopamine that activates our rewards sector of our brain. And flooding with that dopamine, we will crave for more dopamine, and we will tend to repeat that behavior. The faster and the more intense the stimuli are, they can cause more dependence. That's why short videos cause more dependency than long ones. That's why TikTok addicts much more than YouTube, because in TikTok you have short videos. And what takes place with these children is that if you expose them from a young age to quick videos, they will not develop the ability to focus and concentrate for a long time in a longer stimulus, because that's something that we acquire throughout our lives. We're not born with it. Before we had mobile phones, we read books and we focused more. We learned how to focus more. We had stop signs. Stop signs is everything that says that I can rest between a chapter and another. For instance, social media do not have these stop signs. It's one after the other, non-stop. So children are less likely to be able to stop. When I release dopamine in my reward system, I also release dopamine in my brain, in the area that controls behavior, prefrontal cortex. It enables me to delay my rewards and contain my impulses. So when I release too much dopamine, it will not operate the way it should. So I become more impulsive and have more difficulty to control the use of a mobile phone. If that happens to a child, I accelerate the process of development of addiction. So children become are more prone to addiction and faster than adults. And we had these studies in the University of Minas Gerais, and we compared addiction to cocaine and addiction to smartphones. And the areas of the brain that are affected are the same. And also the damage to the prefrontal cortex are the same as well. So we become impulsive and cannot control the behavior. So the need to increase frequency and intensity to reach the same pleasure. Withdrawal syndrome with feeling irritated, anxious when the person is away from the mobile phone or the drug. Tolerance, which is the need to increase more and more to achieve the same pleasure. Difficulty to control, even though aware of the harm to one's life or to other people's lives. The symptoms are the same when we compare all types of addictions. So dependency is the loss of control over the behavior despite the negative consequences. What are the alert signs for smartphone addiction? In our DSM, there's no diagnosis criteria to diagnose that. I believe soon we will have one. We'll have criteria to diagnose. While we don't have one, we use tracking scales. So in progressive increase of use, abandonment of other activities, less repertoire. My patients cannot do activities in which they can't use their smartphone. Sports, for instance. They feel bad. They feel ill because the activity is incompatible with the use of smartphone. We call that narrowing of repertoire. Harming interpersonal relationships. So if a child is dependent on smartphones, they relate less and worse with family, parents, brothers, sisters than a child that's not dependent. There's academic and laboral prejudices in the case of adolescents and adults. There are symptoms such as irritability, and I have various patients that get very nervous and irritated, and they only calm down when the mother gives the mobile phone. I have two children. And sometimes when they start crying and I do give in to what they want because I'm exhausted, and I understand that it's not always our fault. Reduction or absence of plays outside the smartphone. These children cannot play without their smartphones, and reduction of quality of their sleep because the mobile phone issues a blue light frequency that harms sleep and deep sleep. Sometimes the child is sleeping the entire night, but since she was the entire afternoon in her smartphone, the quality of that sleep will not be good and will harm the next day and her learning because learning needs needs good sleep. And these are our signs. Soon we forbid the use of smartphone in schools. My patients who are addicted were not able to follow that rule because they are addicted. So even though in a dangerous situation, driving or across the street, the person continues with the mobile phone. I had a teenager that was my patients, that she was not going to her classes. She stayed in the restroom to stay with on her mobile phone, and then she couldn't have that control. She was criticized by people in her surroundings, because that's what happens in addictions. The people in their surroundings, they notice before the dependent. Dependents are not able to have meals, and they are always using their smartphones when they eat. So using smartphone to fight negative states of humor, anxiety, sadness, as a way to regulate emotions. So those who are addicted, they need the smartphone to regulate their own emotions, and they often do not develop strategies to regulate their emotions, and noticing that and not being able to reduce the use or control their use. So this was my MA. I did a tracking scale about smartphone dependency, because if they meet 5 or more of these criteria, it's a warning sign that they might be dependent, and we have to send to a professional for diagnosis. So because this is a tracking, so a professional evaluation is essential. Later I can send to you this scale, but it's very much based on what we already knew about gaming, drug dependency. The signs and symptoms are the same, but adapted to smartphone. So the excessive use is different from dependency. Dependency is the loss of control and loss of freedom. What are the peculiarities of smartphone dependency? Portability and accessibility. Acceptability is much more difficult to control use. So I'm a psychiatrist. I have been a psychiatrist for 13 years. In the beginning, when I started to work, this did not exist. So how did we treat chemical dependency? Cocaine, for instance. Don't go to the same places, don't go to the same situations, etc. How am I going to tell to a person addicted to smartphone? 72, they put children to eat marshmallow, and they told the children, I will give you a marshmallow. If you are able to wait for 1 hour and not eat the marshmallow, after that 1 hour, I'll give you another one and you will eat two. The children who had more self-control and waited 1 hour to eat the second marshmallow, they grew as adults with greater self-control, better jobs, and less tendency to become addicted. And those children that ate the marshmallow quickly were not able to and couldn't wait to get the second one. They grew up more impulsive with more tendency to all types of addictions. So it seems to be a personality trait that favors chemical dependency. In addition, the brains of these people who are more vulnerable to be smartphone dependent, they do not issue signs that will tell them that this decision is bad for her future. So children who do not have much chance of dependency, they can understand that using excessively smartphone will cause harm in the long run. And children who are prone to dependency, they cannot think about consequences in the medium and long run. So this leads to dependencies. And these people have their prefrontal cortex, they work less, their reward system works more, and the prefrontal cortex, it's maturing, it's slower throughout the entire life. So comorbidities are the rule and not the exception. It's very common that dependency to be associated with other psychiatric disorders, so we have to treat everything together. Otherwise, the chance of success will decrease. The consequences I'd like to highlight about the reduction of empathy, the ability to understand the emotions of other people. Because when we relate intensely virtually, we are not good at interpreting emotional traits, facial expressions, and that has been happening with children. And how do we treat that? Let's talk about the clinical part. First, identify the function of that behavior. Every behavior only exists because it brings something good. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist. This is evolutional. So for that children, the mobile phone, it's bringing relief, pleasure, or running away from a situation. Something good it's offering to her. So we have to identify what's that advantage. I cannot simply remove the smartphone from that child because the child will be aggressive or depressed. So I have to identify what that child needs, what place the mobile phone is occupying. Is it a company because their parents don't give attention? Is she being a victim of bullying? Is she anxious? Because then I'll have to look for other ways to offer her that same benefit that will now not harm her. So treat anxiety, increase connection with friends and family members, go to school and talk about bullying or change schools. I have to see what's the main role of that mobile phone before removing the mobile phone. So I have to identify alternative behaviors. How do we do that? Stimulating activities that are incompatible with the use of mobile phones, dance, arts, sports, anything that she can do without the mobile phone so that she can find pleasure or relief or satisfaction and become interested in other activities. This is essential. Apps that block excessive use, especially social media and games, they already have apps that limits the use. You can use it like 1 hour per day and use that app, and social media are automatically blocked. And remove screen notification because notification is a stimulation to access the phone. For instance, when the child is doing something important, the mobile phone will stay away. For instance, when she is studying, because it makes it more easy to regulate that behavior. Establishing rules at home. For instance, during meals, the entire family, nobody uses the phone so that people can talk and interact. Delete apps that are most addictive or put them in black and white because it's less attractive to the brain. Try not to use mobile phones before going to sleep. Reduce gradually. What I do is I do contingency management with my children. As time go by, you decrease the screen time. And as you decrease screen time, they will be rewarded. For example, a little golden star. After a certain amount of stars, they will win a prize. So it's a physical reward. Among children, we must control screen time, control content. We need to have rooms that have no technology inside. And we as adults, we must be role models because children learn through example. If I don't want my child to use the smartphone too much and I use it all the time, they will do what I'm doing, not on what I'm saying. So I must set a good example and play. Children like to interact with their parents. The Brazilian Association of Pediatrics put this rule from 0 to 2 years old, no screen, 2 to 5 years old, 1 hour per day, 6 to 10 years, controlled use, controlled content, and from 11 to 18, 2 through 3 hours per day. That's what's recommended as the healthier use, and especially not recreational use, but to study. When do we start medication? When the other alternatives do not work, or when the children is already harmed and suffering or having academic problems. So we treat with antidepressants, a series of medications that decrease impulsiveness, among other things. Thank you very much. Thank you, doctor. If you let her, she'll just talk a lot. It's a lot to say, right? This was 1.5. In the morning was like 2.0. Now we went on speed 1.5. Thank you, doctor. Great.
Mas é assim mesmo, né?
But it's not enough time for such a complex theme, and I think that you are noticing the severity of that. We truly need to pay more attention and start looking at that with more dedication and concern. Now, I will call to the stage Mr. Eiji Fukushima to talk a little bit about the international experience. What is being doing abroad, thought, and worked about on this theme? You have the floor. Good morning. I'm also going to speak slowly, and I hope you can understand me. The presentation that I prepared for today is based on my works for by two doctors. The first one is Lucia Magis Weinberg. She's a Mexican researcher who conducts studies on this theme on the US. And the other is Jennifer Patterson. She's from the United States and she's working on commitment and acceptance therapy aimed at behavioral addictions. To start to talk about this issue, I'd like to make an introduction that my colleagues have already mentioned, but it's important to know that many mental disorders, they start in teenage years and in early adulthood, and it includes mental disorders and dependency disorders. But we must consider that much of technology, mobile phone, social media, those that we know, were designed to have bigger engagement. We talk a lot about these logics that the mobile phones have. They know what we are looking for. They know what we want to see. If I want to buy new shoes, you are on your mobile phone and then the shoes that you want show up. And they were created that way, very intelligent, to create more engagement with youngsters. They're very attractive, and which makes them dangerous. And this was commented on having control about that. So the issue of having or not having the device. We are concerned because we know that each moment, because we know if we receive the message, if my friend read my message, we are become stressed because of that. This causes a stress in us. And this has been generated other parameters about friendships. That's another important issue. Thirdly, social media. We have other actions for development of teenagers. First of all, sleep. Sleep hours. These hours are very important, approximately from 8 to 9 hours. And they are interrupted for being in social media. The other are exercise, interacting with people, time outside the house. All of that is affected by the use of screens. And if we are in social media, we are not paying with money these social media. We are paying this social media with our time, with our data. But not everything we say about social media and mobile phone is bad. We must think that there are positive things as well and other aspects. There are risk aspects. I like this example of the this upper image over there, that it went to the top of that floor of her house to get a better Wi-Fi signal. But that's a risk for her to her life. She can fall. But there are other images or experiences that we have regarding the pandemic in a Peruvian community in which a robot had access to visit populations where they could not continue with their studies. So we must consider these two sides. Not always we are talking about a negative aspect of internet or social media. We must start to know how to manage these social media with children and teenagers. We'll take a look at many studies, which are all based on Dr. Licia Maggi. She has a work team that's very interesting. The first study was conducted about the use of social media in Latin America. And it had two moments. The first one was conducted in Peru and in Mexico, in schools with approximately a sample of 5,000 students from 2020, 2021. So it's the pandemic, right? The period of the pandemic. And we are talking about students from sixth grade to ninth grade, 11th grade, and they had access to internet and social media. The other sample was in Bolivia and Uruguay, and that was after the pandemic from 2022 to 2023. In Uruguay, students from the 4th to 8th grade, and in Bolivia from 5th to 12th grade. What were the data of this study? It's important to know that the pandemic had important effects on anxiety, depression, loneliness, and happiness with life. They decreased in the first sample that we saw during the pandemic. And after the pandemic, we saw that many of these youngsters, they attained over they went up to 8 hours of mobile phone use. In the graph we have here preteens, so children, and in orange, teens. Among teens, we see 8.39 hours, and preteens 5.33 hours. So when do they study? When do they play? When do they spend time with their family? Another important study of Dr. Magis is that they receive many notifications every day, nearly 237 on average per day. And out of these 237 notifications, 25% of them are replied by these young people. Take a look at this graph, please, because we are talking about from 0 to 10, from 100 to 0 to 100, from 100 to 200. And you see that we have over 200 notifications. And here, the majority of these notifications, they show up when they are in school and at night. So these times are important for sleep, but also at moments that are important for their studies, where they should be learning at school. Which are the social media used by most of these youngsters? YouTube, social media, video games, and reading. They have problems to sleep, they have mental and physical problems, difficulty to learn, and in their humor. We were talking about digital stress. Other authors define this concept saying that digital stress gives a constant alert, a constant warning of being overloaded with information. Imagine receiving over 250 notifications per day. How many do you receive per day?
Uh, el FOMO, fear of missing out. This anxiety for being to be approved by your peers, and find there was the conclusion that there are differences, like women are more stressed digitally. Women, teenagers, and the elderly, leading to greater levels of depression also. I like this also because it shows us 24 hours in the day. And it's interesting to ask the teenagers what they do. In green, we're seeing teenagers that go to school and from 6 to 3 in the afternoon. In yellow, 7 to noon, and average they are school. In blue, where they have lunch. Then we have dark blue, which are the physical activities. In purple, school activities, and they have 2 hours for free activities where they could do other things. Where are these 8 hours where they're using the cell phone when they should be doing important activities? So, as was said by the doctor, prevention is important, and knowing how to take advantage of these spaces of 2 hours that they have for these activities. So what will be the suggestions? The first suggestion is the occasional use of YouTube, video games, and social network. To use it, the screen time, the minimum possible before going to bed. Television should also be used less. Many times they have the TV on and they're not paying attention to the TV screen at lunchtime. They are also seeing, they eat, have breakfast with their cell phones. Free time, free time will be the video calls with the families, activities, to promote digital skills, creative skills, music, podcast, and free audio. The moderate use are interactive books, films, TV shows, and now I'm going to talk about the Latin common sense. But I think that if we also participate in these activities, if we have better control over this, we could avoid such digital dependency. Other study by Dr. Magis in Peru, Uruguay, and Bolivia asked the youth about the friendships they create online, and the ones done in person also. The answers were very interesting. The adolescents make friends through TikTok, WhatsApp, and they show two types of results. One are the friendships that are made in person, face to face. These friendships have more positive aspects, but also more negative aspects. While the online friendships made online are sources of support and shared interests. This means that sometimes we think that online friendships are not real online friendships, but we have to understand that we are from another generation and had other ways of socializing. Well, when we were always face to face with our friends, now the youth have other ways of socializing through social networks, internet, cell phone, that allow for other types of support that we do not take into consideration. So it is important to think that friendships are also part of the circle of friendships, and they're important. They're strong in emotional terms. So what can I do? First of all, I think there have been important efforts done by Dr. Lucia Magis for prevention. She has been carrying out, delivering courses targeted to teenagers and parents so that they can be more involved in supervising and better managing the time that their kids are on the screen of their smartphones. If you can take a picture here of the slides of this common sense education used to guide educators and parents in a course of 6 sessions with videos, notebooks, and reflections on important topics to balance these aspects. I don't think it's in Portuguese there, but there's a Spanish version and an English version, and it can contribute with several important elements to help prevent and teach the adequate times of use of the social networks. This in the prevention step. In the treatment step, Dr. Jennifer Patterson, who's an American researcher, worked a lot with the therapy of acceptance and commitment with these behaviors regarding dependency. One thing that is very interesting that she used to say, and that I can see that people are talking about here, there are two important aspects when we talk about treatment. We talk about impulsiveness and compulsiveness. Many studies, when the new diagnosis classification table emerged, many of the dependency behaviors were not included in it because we don't have the specific signs, diagnostic symptoms that would equal the use of sumption. So it did not get into DMS-5. So I asked my colleagues about this, and I said that they could maybe fit into impulsiveness disorders. And after I saw Patterson's work, Dr. Patterson's work, to me it's very clear the difference between impulsiveness and compulsiveness. Impulsiveness is when we act without thinking, and we do it very quickly. But seeking for pleasure, feeling satisfaction quickly, compulsion, such as impulsiveness, is activated immediately without thinking, but the compulsion will appear when we're trying to alleviate a negative aspect. So here on the image, you can see several of the disorders that can emerge from impulsiveness. Oftentimes, we have these first behaviors of dependency due to impulsiveness, but they remain due to compulsiveness. So today we talked about digital dependency, but we also have hypersexuality, internet, games, compulsive shopping, and other behaviors that are within this pattern of behavior. We cannot forget that the brain is always going to seek for behaviors that will reward it with pleasure. When we study substance dependencies, it's clear that we repeat behaviors that give us pleasure, such as eating, drinking, seeing people we like, and we know that substances also generate this pleasure. Although I'm meditating, doing negative things, my brain still receives pleasure from this, and also happens with the dependency behaviors. And it's important to understand that it happens through impulsiveness, and then it escalates to compulsiveness. So I'm bored, don't know what to do. So for the treatment, regarding the treatment, Dr. Patterson mentions that we have people, whether adolescents or adults, can have some type of primary pain of a negative situation in their lives, their day-to-day lives, a loss, failure, uncertainty that took place. But instead of tackling or facing this pain, we do not do that. We then start engaging in behaviors that generate behavior pleasure. The problem is that we go to this behavior so many times without facing this primary pain, and this leads to secondary pain.
Una visión para se les enseña a los pacientes a enfrentar y aceptar ese dolor primario.
Uh, we work on the part of depression. The psychiatrist served medication. Then the real problem is not depression, is the addiction to pornography. That is when we work that, we understand that lots of things emerge from this primary pain that we were not able to tackle. So it's honest, and with this, I will conclude my lecture. Any comments? Here is my email. Thank you so much, Freemind, and all my colleagues here on stage. Well, great. It's great to have the participation of someone that is not in the Brazilian context and so brings to us so much information, and we're able to see how this is a problem, an issue seen as a problem in other countries too. And when we research this topic, we find several studies from the US and also from Asian countries. In fact, in China, there's a very interesting public policy experience where teenagers up to 14, young people up to 14 can only use TikTok, the short video app, to see content, watch content that is educational. It's not used for entertainment. So this is one of the possible actions of public policies to restrict a bit more the access to this. We know that the easier the access, the greater the consumption or use, and that is the problem of a smartphone, social medias. If there's no regulation, if there is no restriction, the trend is that things will worsen. And to talk about public policies, we will bring on stage Mr. Leonardo Risso, who will talk about this specific topic. Mr. Leonardo Carriço. Well, let's now we're going to the last presentation of the panel. It's hard, right? After lunch, we get sleepy, but I promise I'll try not to be so tedious here on front. So just to complement, oh, thank you. Just to complement what Ivan mentioned about China, another very curious thing that although they did develop TikTok, they ban it for the children of their own children. Their children cannot access TikTok, our can. And also limiting the time. They will not let children use smartphones from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. So see some restrictions that are a bit polemic, but I will show you other public policies implemented in other countries. So now bringing data about tickets, and you will see that regulation policies pass all the content that have been presented by my colleagues here in this panel. This new edition of Kids, published in October, shows that internet users from 9 to 17 are 92% of the population, of our population, Brazil. And here is it is divided by states. So South prevails with 96%, and North is the one that uses the least, but still it's a very expressive number. And when we see the matter of having an actual cell phone, 70 of internet users, 77% in 2005, and in 2024, 81%. And you can see the comparison by age, and we can see that those that use the most are the older ones, are the older children and the older people. And current scenario of our country regarding the place where these young people use their cell phones. At home, that's the prevailing place. School, with the great focus of concern, it is seen in fourth in the survey. And when we stratify this, the use in school by age, we see that it's similar to what we have outside school, which is prevalence of children that are older, from 15 to 17 years old. Another thing that is very important and that has already been mentioned by my colleagues is the role of the parents in all this. The parents are essential, they're crucial in giving examples to their children regarding screen time use. And you have three different charts. The first one showing parents that share things they find on the internet with their children, like news, videos, memes, Instagrams, stories, and we see it by age. So parents also participate in this dynamic of using smartphones of their children and of parents and children. It's a source of communication, a cell phone, a source of communication between parents and children. So here we also have the charts with parents that are concerned and about what their children do on the internet, showing that this concern is very similar up to the age of 14. Then they're a bit less concerned. You know, parents start thinking, oh, he's a bit older now that he's 15, and this. So when they're 15, they are a bit less concerned, the parents. The fact that a parent is there as a helper shows that on the last chart, that when the parent participates in some type of difficulty that this kid has been facing, and you can open the menu here, such as educational issues, entertainment issues, like parents that play video games with their kids, or parents that teach their kids to use some educational platform. And we also see a smaller number in teenagers that are a bit older, and teenagers below the age of 15. And in Brazil, in January this year, the law of 15,100 was enacted, restricting the use of cell phones during lunchtime, break time, and intervals, except when the use is educational and guided by the classroom teacher. This emotional strategy of connected schools, which is a movement, an intersectorial movement, aims to promote digital citizenship, including digital citizenship in the curriculum and the training of the teachers. So right at the beginning, it's hard and it's a bit contradictory, because while digital use is stimulated, we come with this movement of restriction and prohibition. So making a parallel with dependencies in general, I like to think that technology, smartphones, such as alcohol, smartphone, could be compared to the bottle, right? A bottle is the mean. What's in the bottle is is water or cachaça. So for him, it can be used for something positive or for something negative. So finding this balance between this matter, that is what really matters and makes the difference and should underlie public policies. So other actions that already exist in Brazil, I show you the guide on the use of digital devices, which is a interministerial document with guidelines based on evidence for public administrators, teachers, families. And it's important to know that we can only minimize loss, harms if all the actors work together. Because it's very complicated for a teacher to restrict the use in the classroom if at home it is 100% allowed, encouraged, and even the parents use it in excess also. Regarding the Brazilian Society for Pediatrics, the colleague that made her talk before me showed the recommendations about the number of hours of screen time or prohibition and the ages, the recommended ages. So I just like to mention that the Brazilian Society of Pediatrics already identifies the risks and has manuals guiding parents. And in the end, are the ones that are responsible for taking care and handling and providing strategies for these children. So, what about across the world? What are the public policies on regarding this topic, regulation policies? So we have China with a more aggressive policies with prohibitions. These studies have been applied throughout the world, and the European country, for example, France, it was the pioneer in 2018. It banned smartphones in high school and secondary school, only allowing this tool in college and universities. Of course, this came along with, such as in our country, came along with public policies from other sectors incentivizing digital pauses and with awareness campaigns for the French about the abusive use of these technologies. Spain last year also adopted complete prohibition in the primary education, and when it comes to college and university, it is only allowed if the teacher needs to use digital resources. Australia, the other side of the world, also in 2020 adopted this prohibition policy, not only regarding smartphones, they expanded it to earbuds, smartwatches, anything that could somehow have digital interaction with the kids and that could make them lose their attention. The US doesn't have a federal law that obliges all states to act in a specific sense, so it's a bit more liberal regarding each state. Florida was the first one that adopted this prohibition, showing in some studies very satisfactory results. So this model adopted in Florida has been replicated to other states. And increasingly, people are more conscious that this model works better than free access of children. Some certain criticism regarding prohibition, complete prohibition. PISA, which is that body that evaluates teaching and learning across the world, it shows that even prohibiting students, they would still use the cell phone a lot in the classrooms, and complete and full prohibition showed results that were not very good in terms of student performance, indicating that maybe there might be some casual aspect to it. Because today we know that smartphones are also a source of information, and children use it to study. So it was prohibited, and PISA showed that the countries that prohibited 100% had lower performances um, in terms of school student performances. Regarding content in school, the teacher also has to supervise the kids, so it overloads the teacher, of course, and there's this deviation of job roles and generating unnecessary conflicts with the kids. And rule of thumb, if you don't have the parental model that I mentioned a bit before, the child will not see any sense to that and will start fighting with a teacher, creating a bad environment in the classroom. uh, Educational contradiction, the fact that the national curriculum of Brazil requires learning digital skills. So we have the digital citizenship, which is broadly promoted by the federal government, so we cannot prohibit 100% the use of smartphones and digital means in some colleges. If you think that one of the items of the curriculum is digital skills, creating digital skills. Here are tables showing the possible models, the three possible models regarding public policies on the user's smartphone. First one, complete ban. Second, the model of educational mediation, which is more balanced. And the third model, regulating design, which aims to protect the users. I think the key here, which is the control of the device and the behavior in the prohibition model, educational mediation is the development of skills where you can use technology as a means to something. So developing a critical literacy, and the design regulation model is more directed to platforms that are in these apps. So it's much more about security of the platform and the design of the service. This goes much in line with what Dr. Julia mentioned before. For example, the apps are not that attractive to that population that can become ill, because we know that apps today have several stimuli, colors, and intermittent reinforcements of rewarding notifications all the time. So this type of apps, they are harmful for kids. So policies that regulate the apps itself are essential to try to reduce our population from becoming ill from that. Some schooler critics, academic critics, the model of prohibition will deepen a digital exclusion, because we know that today smartphones are the main means of online access of the more vulnerable population income-wise, class C and D. Now, the model of educational mediation, where you have the teacher as the mediator for the use of the screens, shows that it's a more positive critics, depending the access of when you compare it to low income students. Regarding regulating the design of the apps, it's neutral or positive because it benefits all users regardless of them having a cell phone or not. So some practical recommendations for public administrators and policymakers, transforming policies into concrete actions. So this law 1500, it has to be connected to public decisions, adopting a three-way model, that is federal, state, and towns and cities need to be in the same path, in line with one another, and surveillance, supervision policies, and collecting data about how a specific population has used smartphones. So assessment, what's the level of illness of that population? What are the greatest harm that teachers identify in a classroom? All of these are important to formulate public policies regarding intersectorial approach, believing that we're able to control this only with the schools or only by forwarding everyone with the dependency problems to a health unit, or letting social networks act the way they wish. It's hard that this will work, a scenario like this will work. Hardly a scenario like this will work. So it's important to integrate all actors and incentivize partnerships with with NGOs, technology companies that actually actively operate in this sector, especially design, availability of what is there in the app. A very important focus are the awareness raising campaigns. These campaigns are supported by and sustained by TV that are not so efficient today because TV viewing has decreased and is decreasing constantly. So this population is in the social networks. So these campaigns need to go into the social networks, and communication needs to be clear because parents and their kids, if they do not understand the risks and the benefits of these policies, hardly they will follow them. So improving communication and informing the public administrators, the parents, of why that needs to be done is a crucial step. And resources. Schools need to have resources to deal with this matter of prohibition. So allocate resources for adequate infrastructure, facilities. So oftentimes a school would let children use their cell phones during break time because they didn't have like an appropriate facility that would make it easier to have offline activities, and continuous training programs for the teachers, and also educational materials. That is extremely important. And in line with the need of data to be able to create efficient public policies, we need to monitor and have support, back these people, support these peoples that have become ill. So using technology needs to be monitored, supervised. We have to ensure psychological support at schools to identify signs of digital dependencies, signs of bullying in a school, and integration of data in an observatory for the collection, and to understand, get to know the population. That is the only way we can create public policies based on evidence, and we know that's what works the best. Now, recommendations for schools and educators applying the norms of use based on awareness, including digital education in the curriculum, involving families in the process. That's also very important. What is very important also is balancing the use of screen time at home and training and supporting educators. I have run out of time, but I would like to show a study of parental styles. The slides will be made available to you if you want to see it later on. So this is my conclusion slide. I hope you enjoyed, made a good use of it, of my presentation, and see you next time. Thank you. So it was very enriching what happened today. This panel sheds a light on what not observed by many, and you have as a mission from now on to convey this information and share this and provoke discussions where you are in your cities, your towns, because it is a fact that it's a problem that tends to grow if we do not act on it. So I'd like to deeply thank all participants, all panelists that really helped, Mr. Eiji Fukushima, Dr. Julia Curry, Dr. Leonardo Carrizo, Dr. Edmara. So a great round of applause for them. Thank you, all of you. May God be with you. Thank you, Ivanildo. Thank you, all of you panelists. God bless you all. Now our official picture. So guys, a small break and we will come back to a topic to conclude in a very special way, the use and abuse in work environment in the companies, corporations. Come participate in this panel that we will begin soon.